Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Hello, dear students. We had our grammar lesson. There were lots of details in the grammar lesson, and you did have homework. So let's just revise what we took in our lesson. Now we're going to go back to the grammar lesson that we took. Now in Unit 3, we talked about the future tense. In our lesson, we talked about the future progressive, the future perfect progressive actually. We have also the future perfect simple. We also applied the using will or going to for the future tense, and of course we used time clauses with the future tense. We had the complete table here to show the differences between the different structures, and you can see that also we have the different time clauses or the words that can be used also with the future. Now going back to our homework, which is on page number 36 and 37, we're going to start with the first one, 36. Now we did the exercises with together the last time. So let's just check what you did as homework. Now we have number 4. We have also the two events. We have my father will work at his company for 20 years, and the second event, he will retire. So how did you combine between the two sentences here? Now remember that we had to combine together and make them just one sentence. So we have here, by the time my father retires, he will have worked at his company for 20 years. Number 5, number 1, the first event, he will decide which college to attend, and the second event, February will come. So combining together, we have here, he will have decided which college to attend by February. Number 3, we have here, the food will get cold and you will come to the table. So how to combine them together? We have here, by the time you come to the table, the food will have gotten cold. Did you get gotten correct? And we have the last one. We have here, he will learn to drive and he will graduate. We can combine them by saying, he will have learned to drive by the time he graduates. So this is our first exercise. We have the second one, to use the future perfect or the future perfect progressive to complete each sentence. And as we mentioned, that sometimes both of them can be used. Now you can see that also we did the first examples. And we're going to complete. We have our homework. Number 5, I've already lost 5 kilograms on my diet. If I lose another 2, you're going to complete. So what did you write? I have here, I will have lost 7 kilograms. We have number 6, I moved to Singapore in 2018. By 2032, I will have lived in Singapore for 15 years. Okay, so after that we have number 7. We started waiting 20 minutes ago. If she gets here in 10 minutes, what did you complete? We have here, I wrote, we will have waited for 30 minutes. Do you have the same answer? After that, we have here number 8. This TV show started 2.5 hours ago. In another half hour, it will have been playing for 3 hours. So you can check alone, you can check with your classmates, and just revise the answers. Moving on, we have the last one. Now also we have just to use the verbs in the parentheses in either the future tense, will or be going to. Now also we had the first one, or the first parts, number 1, 2, and 3 done. We're going to complete in number 4. We have the verb run. Now run to the store before it raining. Note that you can use either will or be going to. So we have here, he will run to the store before it starts raining. Now you can see that we have here the present simple is also used in the sentence. Number 5, when you blank drive down the road, you blank see a large red building. Now when you drive, base form, present simple, you will see or are going to see a large red building. So you're going to use either verb to be with going to, or you can say will see. Now in number 6, you can see that we have a question. Blank you, blank argue. So how to make a question using the future form here? We have here, yes, are you going to, argue with me until I change my mind. So you can see that the exercises, there is a combination between the future and the present simple. Okay, now going back to our title, what will they think of next? As we mentioned in our last lesson, and we did mention also in the Listen and Discuss, that there are different ideas and different things to imagine and talk about that concern the future. Now we're going to just go back a little bit, and we're going to compare between things that have changed. We have here what things that we take for granted today did people not have 100 years ago. Do you remember this question? We had this question actually in the Listen and Discuss. So maybe you thought about different things, maybe other things came in mind. So the things that we can compare between are many. We can compare, first of all, between the needs that people used to have in the past and what are the things that we have now. Now there are things that are necessities for us, and we think that we must have them. Now we can say, for example, our personal cell phones. Now, like cell phones or mobiles, they weren't used in the past, so now it is different from before. We can say also that there are different things. Now you can see like using CDs, or we have here records. They are not used like before. We have also different items. You can see the difference between people that we use today, laptops generally, or we have keyboards, and before they had typewriters. Also, we can compare between the past and the present by just comparing mail. Now, before people received their mail, paper mail, and now we can just get it email. Also, we have different games or toys that have changed throughout the years. You can see that even calculators were used before. Now we can just use our phones. And you can see also there are different examples. The phones, cameras, even pens, they are different actually from before. Now here, this is just an idea about the things that have changed throughout the years. Now they may not be very old. You can just think about things that we enjoyed or we had a couple of years ago, and now they have changed. Now some of them, they are positive. Some people think that before was better. So I can just give you a short example here. How do you feel about changes? Now what is my example? You can see that I have these two notes. Now I am your teacher. You did amazing work. I can either send you a message, okay, or an email. So we have here, dear student, you are doing great. Your marks are getting better and better. Keep it up. You are awesome. I can give you the same message, but I had it written for you. So what do you feel? I have the same thing. You can see that it is here handwriting and typed. How do you feel about it? Would you prefer to have the written form, or do you prefer the other type? So actually there are advantages and disadvantages for each one that we're going to discuss in the future, inshallah. So I'll just give you a time just to think about it. What do you prefer? So you just received this message. Think about it. How do you feel about it? Would you like to have my message written or typed? Another thing that has changed, books. So we have here books now can be electronic books. Now the same book that we have here, it can be either a book that you buy and you read, or you can just have the same book downloaded and read online. So it depends even on you as a person, which one or which do you prefer and why. So you do have your reasons. If you prefer regular books, you are free, of course, and you can just explain to your classmates or colleagues why do you prefer regular books. And if you prefer the electronic book, also you can give your reasons. So we are going to talk about these differences and specifically about electronic books in our conversation lesson. We have the conversation lesson is, of course we have here, there is a basic question here. What can you say if you want to persuade someone? Now this is an interesting word. We have persuade. Remember, in conversation, we have different types of conversation. If you remember in Unit 1, we had the type that, you remember in Unit 1, what did we take? When there was kind of negotiating, okay, happening between the two boys who were studying in New York. Or discussion, as we had when there was the idea about getting 30,000 riyals for graduation. Now, this is something different. We have something about persuading someone. Now, if you do not know the meaning of persuading, you are going to catch the meaning throughout the conversation. We're going to go back to it. So as we said that we have here the conversation, first of all, we're going to start with our objectives. We have number 1, to give the meanings of words based on the text. Number 2, to answer questions and express opinions. Number 3, to use real talk and specific phrases in sentences. Number 4, to use persuading phrases in conversations. So we are going to meet our characters here in the conversation. We have the idea, of course, it's going to be about electronic books and regular books, of course. We have the two figures that we are going to share our conversation with. Now you can see that we have here a young boy and we have an old lady. So the lady here, she is the grandmother of whom we have here Edward and his grandmother. So we're going to listen to the conversation between Edward and his grandmother. Edward could complete our discussion. So let's start. Remember that we're going to talk about persuading.
Grandma, you've been lugging that book around all weekend.
If I want to read it, what choice do I have?
You can ditch the book and get an electronic book reader.
A what?
An electronic book reader. They're these great little devices that let you read books electronically, so you read on screen instead of on paper.
But, I like reading on paper.
Trust me, Grandma, in a few years, no one is going to be reading books printed on paper anymore. Paper books will have disappeared.
I don't like all this new technology. I'm happy with things the way they are.
You really should check out e-book readers. One of the advantages is that you can buy, download, and start reading a book in minutes. Another great thing about it is that you can carry hundreds of books with you without it being heavy.
Why would I want to carry hundreds of books around with me?
Grandma, I'm sure if you just gave it a try, you'd find that you actually prefer it. Why not? Go with the flow.
I think this is all just a lot of hoopla. I've been reading my books on paper for 68 years, and I'm not about to change that now.
Okay, now let's start our discussion. Now, we said that we're going to discuss persuading phrases. So what are the persuading phrases that we have here? Now, when Edward said, I'm sure if you just give it a try, you'll find. Now, here in the text, you can see that we have this part in your books. Now, I'm sure if you just give it a try, you'll find that electronic books are better. So the phrase, I'm sure, gives some kind of persuading. He is trying to convince his grandmother to use e-books. So here, persuading is convincing. You are giving your point of view and you want the other person to try it. Another phrase is one of the advantages. If you want to convince someone or persuade this person, you show the advantages of the thing that you're talking about. So also here in the conversation, you can see that one of the advantages is that you can buy, download, and start reading a book in minutes. So this is an advantage that he is trying to use. Also, another one is one reason you should consider. So here also, like showing advantages, another reason you should consider trying something new. This is a phrase that is used for persuading. We have also, trust me on this. Now, this is a very simple phrase that you can use if you want someone to try something new. Trust me on this, to show strongly that you want this person to agree with you. What's great about this is also to show the advantages of what you are talking about. Also another phrase that is used for persuading. look at it this way is also a phrase that is used now just to show that you are showing this person the idea that you have in mind that is different from his way or her way. So look at it the other way, a way to persuade or to convince. Now, we have finished the persuading phrases. Let's just go to the questions that you have in the book. We have the first question. What does Edward want Grandma to try? Now, note here that I'm going to give you or discuss the answers with you, but I'm going to also use the real talk or to point out the real talk that we have in the conversation. So, what does Edward want Grandma to try? He wants her to ditch the book she has been lugging around all weekend. Ditch. What is the meaning of ditch? You can see that we have your ditching means that you are going to just throw something away or you're going to just get rid of it. And we have here lugging. Now, like this girl, her bag, it shows that it is heavy. So it can be also something that an idea or anything that is heavy that you are just carrying around with you. So it can be something abstract or it can be something real. No, lugging here means that you are carrying something heavy around. Also, another question. What arguments does he make? Now you can see that Edward used a lot of persuading phrases here. Now, what arguments does he make? You can see that we have here, he wants her to check out e-book readers and go with the flow. So we have here, check out is a phrase, a real talk phrase that is used to check out something, to try something new, and then you can decide if you like it or not. We have also go with the flow. Now, go with the flow is a phrase that is used to show that everyone is trying something or doing something and you just go ahead and go with them. The last question, is Edward successful in persuading Grandma? Why or why not? So what do you think? What did she answer at the very end? Now, if you recall, in your book, you can just check that she said at the very end, she thinks it is all just a lot of hoopla. Now, hoopla here is a real talk word. That means that something is given more than, or given attention more than it is worth. So we have here, these are the phrases or the words that we have here in the conversation. We discussed the persuading phrases and we pointed out the real talk words that we are going to go back and revise inshallah in our next lesson. But you do have your assignment here. Now your assignment is to role play with a partner. Tell your partner about something you use or do, such as a kind of technology or a sport. Try to persuade your partner to try it. Use phrases to persuade. So you're going to convince someone to try something new. It can be something to eat or something or some kind of activity or some new book, for example. How would you convince the other person or how would you persuade them to try something? Now, since we are talking about changes here, and we did mention lots of examples about changes, one of the things that have changed, as you can see from the picture, another thing that has changed is, yes, we have here the newspaper. So just think about newspapers. Do you read newspapers now, like the picture that I just showed? Now we have here newspapers. How did the newspaper change? Did you read old newspapers or do you read now newspapers, and where do you read them? We have here, we're going to show the kinds of newspapers. Now, what are the kinds of newspapers? We have here 1, 2, 3. So there are 3 kinds. We have the first one. It started with printed newspapers, the paper kind. The second we have here then happened the online newspapers. And after that, we have here electronic newspapers appeared. So we now know that there were 3 types, or there are still 3 types. We're going to just talk about these types here in the listening. We're going to discuss, but after we listen. So we have here on page number 39. You're going to open your book on page number 39, which of course, the idea that we have here is about newspapers. Now you are going to listen and answer what are the advantages and disadvantages of each type. 3 kinds. we're going to see what are the advantages and disadvantages of each type of the three. You have your table in the book. Of course, before the table, we have our objectives. Now list the differences between the types of newspapers, and number 2, to enumerate the advantages and disadvantages of each type. So, as I mentioned, you have the table. Now we're going to read together the instructions we have here to listen to the information about the future of newspapers. Then complete the chart with the advantages and disadvantages of each news format. You can see that we have here the newspapers, they are written. We have here print, online, electronic. We have here the advantages and disadvantages. You are going to listen and you are going to just write your notes on each type. So we're going to start. Okay. Yes.
Since the early 17th century, newspapers have had the same general format. The news has been printed in ink on paper. Then the newspapers have been circulated to a particular area. However, the Internet brought great change to the newspaper industry. To stay competitive, it became important to have an online presence. Today, most major newspapers around the world have an online version of their print paper. Online newspapers present some important advantages. For example, they can present news up to the minute, instead of having to wait to print the next edition of the paper. An advantage to the reader is that most online news sources are free. However, it seems almost certain that there are further changes ahead for the way newspapers are presented and sold. Most people in the newspaper industry feel that the next step will be electronic newspapers. Electronic newspapers would use technology related to today's electronic book readers. Like these readers, e-newspapers would use e-ink. Like a computer screen, e-ink has the ability to instantly refresh and change images. However, e-ink uses paper instead of a computer screen, so e-ink images look more like the images in actual books and newspapers. The electronic newspaper will have the look and feel of a print newspaper in other ways as well. It will be as large as the typical print newspaper, with a lightweight, portable screen that is flexible enough to be rolled or folded like a newspaper. The e-newspaper will combine these advantages of print newspapers with the advantages of online media, such as constant and instant updates, interactivity, and video capability. Replacing print newspapers with e-newspapers will mean that newspaper companies would no longer have the enormous costs of printing, manufacturing, and delivering newspapers. This will mean tremendous savings. One newspaper publisher predicts, by 2030 we will have shifted to an electronic format, and we will have stopped printing paper newspapers completely. When that day comes, newspapers are going to go back to being the most important source of news for the public.
Okay, so what did you listen to, and what are the points that you have written? We are going to check together what we have here. Now, the advantages, I'm going to start with something very simple here, which is the printed. Now, it is large, it is portable, and lightweight. Did you get any of these words or not? So just check with me. We have the disadvantages. On the other hand, we have here, it's not up to the minute news and not free. The second type, online, what are the advantages? We have the advantages are going to be free. They are up to the minute news, interactivity, and video capability. Now, this is something online that you can see and read about every day, and you can just listen to anything that you would like. But on the other hand, the disadvantages, the computer screen, the graphics, they are something that considered sometimes a disadvantage. The last type we have here, electronic. Now the advantages, we can see that look more like paper. So we have here, they are like e-books. Now they look more like paper than computer screen. They are large, lightweight, portable, savings for newspapers. And if you understood and listened very well, you would notice that there are no disadvantages mentioned for this type of newspaper. So at the very end, you can see there are lots of details that we discussed in our lesson, so our outline. We took the conversation, and in the conversation, there was a discussion about books, old and new. We listened, answered questions, and predicted meanings of words from the text. We also built conversations using discussion phrases, of course, persuading phrases here, and applied real talk in sentences. The other part of the lesson was the listening part. We have in the listening script was about newspapers. So we had the advantages, disadvantages concerning the newspaper types that we discussed. Now this is our lesson for the day. Think about the different details and think about the notes that I have written and showed you, and we'll go back to it soon, inshallah, in our next lesson.